The Calendar, How Luisa Received the Gift, from the Book of Heaven Volume 1, by Luisa Piccarreta. Part 6. Jesus Christ taught me that the most effective means for the soul to be freed of every vain apprehension, of every doubt, of every fear, was to protest before heaven, earth and the very demons, that she does not want to offend God, even at the cost of her life, and that she does not want to consent to any temptation of the devil. And this, as soon as the soul feels the coming of the temptation, in the act of the battle, if she can, and as soon as she begins to feel free, and also during the course of the day. By doing this, the soul will not waste time in thinking about whether she has consented or not, because the mere memory of her promise will already give her peace. And if the devil tries to disturb her, she will be able to answer that if she had the intention of offending God, she would not have protested the opposite. In this way, she will remain free of any concern. Now, who can tell the rage of the devil, because, by acting in this way, all of his tricks resolved into confusion for himself, and where he thought he would gain, he would lose, and his very temptations and tricks were used by the soul in order to make acts of reparation and love for her God. The other way he taught me to cast away temptations, was the following: if they tempted me to suicide, I was to answer, "You have no permission from God. On the contrary, to your annoyance, I want to live so as to be able to love my God more." If then they beat me and hit me, I was to humiliate myself, kneel and thank my God, because this was happening as a penance for my sins. Not only this, but to offer everything as acts of reparation for all the offenses against God, which were made in the world. Lastly, an ugly temptation that lasted for a short time was that, after being in contact with demons so ugly for about 1.5 years, I would become pregnant and deliver a little demon with horns. My imagination would breed itself in such a way, that I saw myself in a horrible confusion in the face of what people would say about me, because of such an awful event. Finally, after about 1.5 years of this fight, the cruelties of the demons ceased, and a whole new life began, although the demons did not stop bothering me from time to time. However, it was not so frequent, the battle was not so fierce, and I became used to despising them. The new life that began was at the farm called Torre di Sperata. One day while, more than ever, I was tormented by the devil, to the point that I felt like losing my strengths and fainting. Around evening, while I was in this state, I felt I was having a deadly fit and I lost consciousness. In that state, I saw Jesus Christ surrounded by many enemies. Some were beating him, some were slapping him, some were driving thorns into his head, some were breaking his legs, some his arms. After they reduced him almost to pieces, they put him in the arms of the Madonna, and this happened not too far from me. After the Most Holy Virgin took him in her arms, she drew near me, and crying, she said to me, "Daughter, see how my son is treated by men, the horrible offenses they commit, which never give him respite. Look at him, how he suffers." And I tried to look at him, and I saw him all blood, all wounds, and almost cut up, reduced to a mortal state. I felt such pains that I would have wanted to die 1,000 times rather than see my Lord suffer so much. I felt ashamed of my little sufferings. The Most Holy Virgin added, but always crying, "Come closer to kiss the wounds of my son. He chooses you as victim, and if many offend him, by offering yourself to suffer what he suffers, you will give him a relief in so much suffering. Won't you accept?" I felt so annihilated, I saw myself so bad, and I am still so, and unworthy, that I did not dare to say yes. My nature trembled, I felt so weak from the past pains, that it barely left me a thread of life. Then, I don't know how, I saw demons yelling and shouting from afar, and I saw that everything I had seen the Lord suffer, they were going to do to me, if I accepted. I felt such pains, sufferings, pulling of nerves within me, that I thought I was going to leave life. Finally, I drew near and I kissed his wounds. It seemed that, after I did that, those limbs so lacerated would heal, and the Lord, who before seemed to be almost dead, would begin to revive to new life. Interiorly, I received great lights about the offenses that are given, and attractions to accept being a victim though I should suffer 1,000 deaths, for the Lord deserved everything, and I could not oppose what he wanted. This happened while we were in mute silence. But those gazes that we exchanged were so many invitations, so many burning darts that pierced my heart through. The Most Holy Virgin, especially, spurred me on to accept, but who can tell all that I went through? Finally, looking at me benignly, the Lord told me, "You have seen how much they offend me, and how many walk along the paths of evil, and without realizing it, fall into the abyss. Come to offer yourself before divine justice as victim of reparation for the offenses that are given, and for the conversion of sinners who, with eyes closed, drink at the poisoned fount of sin. A large field of sufferings opens before you, yes, but also of graces. I will never leave you again, I will come within you to suffer all that men do to me, making you share in my pains. For help and comfort, I give you my mother." And he seemed to deliver me to her, and she accepted me. I too offered all of myself to him and to the Virgin, ready to do what he wanted. This is how it ended the first time. After I came round from that state, I felt such pains, such annihilation of myself, that I saw myself as a miserable little worm that was able to do nothing but crawl on the earth. And I said to the Lord, "Help, your omnipotence knocks me down. I see that if you do not lift me, my nothing will undo and be dissolved. Give me suffering, but I beg you to give me strength, for I feel I am dying." And so an alternation began, of visits from our Lord and of torments on the part of demons. The more I resigned myself, the more they increased their rage. A few days after what is said above, I felt like I was losing consciousness again. I remember that, at the beginning, every time I felt such a state come to me, I thought I was going to leave life. As I lost consciousness, our Lord made himself seen once again with the crown of thorns on his head, all dripping with blood, and turning to me, he said, "Daughter, take a look at what men do to me. In these sad times their pride is so great that they have poisoned all the air, and the stench that spreads everywhere is such that it has reached even before my throne in heaven. They act in such a way as to close heaven by themselves. The miserable ones do not have eyes to know the truth, because they are obscured by the sin of pride, followed by the other vices which they bring with themselves. Oh please, give me a relief from so many bitter spasms, and a reparation for so many wrongdoings against me." And in saying this, he removed the crown from himself, which did not look like a crown, but all one piece, such that not even a little portion of the head remained free. It was all pierced through by those thorns. As he removed the crown, he drew near me and asked me if I accepted it. I felt so annihilated, I felt such pains because of the offenses that are given, that I felt my heart split. I said to him, "Lord, do with me what you want." And so he took it, he drove into my head, and he disappeared. Now, who can tell the spasms I felt when I came back into myself? At each movement of my head I thought I would breathe my last, so many were the pains and the prickings I felt in my head, in my eyes, in my ears, behind my neck. I felt those thorns penetrate even into my mouth, and it clenched in such a way that I could not open it to take food, so I would remain sometimes 2 days, sometimes 3, without being able to take anything. When they somehow mitigated, I would feel, sensibly, a hand which pressed my head and renewed the pains, and sometimes the spasms were such that I would lose consciousness because of the pain. At the beginning, this would happen on certain days, while on others it wouldn't. When they were repeated, it would be 3 or 4 times a day, and they would last sometimes a quarter of an hour, sometimes half an hour, sometimes 1 hour, and then I would remain free, though feeling very weak and in suffering. I would remain in suffering, more or less, depending on how much those pains were communicated to me during that state of dozing. I also remember that, since sometimes I could not open my mouth in order to take food, as I said above, because of the sufferings in my head, and since my family knew that didn't really want to be in company, when they saw that I was not eating, they would attribute it to a fuss of mine, and naturally, they would become irritated, they would get upset, and they would mock me. My nature wanted to resent this, because I saw that what they were saying was not true, but the Lord did not want this resentment, and this is what happened. One evening, while we were at the table, and I was in this state of not being able to open my mouth, my family began to get upset. I was so affected that I started to cry, and in order not to be seen, I got up and I went somewhere else, still crying, and I prayed Jesus Christ and the Most Holy Virgin to give me help and strength in order to bear this trial. But as I was doing this, I felt I was beginning to lose consciousness. Oh God! What pain was the mere thought that my family was going to see me, for until then, they had not noticed it. At that moment, I said, Lord, do not allow them to see me. I was so ashamed of being seen, that I myself cannot explain why, and I tried as much as I could to hide myself in those places where I could not be seen. When then I was caught by surprise, in such a way that I would not have the time to hide or at least kneel, for whatever position I was in, I would remain in it, and they might say I was praying, then I would be found out. As I lost consciousness, our Lord made himself seen in the midst of many enemies who gave him all sorts of insults, especially, they grabbed him and trampled him underfoot, they blasphemed against him, they pulled his hair. It seemed to me that my good Jesus wanted to escape from under those fetid souls, and he kept looking. Who knows, he might find a friendly hand who would free him, but he found no one. While seeing this, I did nothing but cry over the pains of my Lord. I would have wanted to go into the midst of those enemies, who knows, maybe I could free him, but I did not dare to. I said to him, Lord, let me share in your pains. Oh please. If only I could relieve you and free you. As I was saying this, those enemies, as if they had understood, came against me, but so enraged. And they began to beat me, to pull my hair, to trample me. I had so much fear, I suffered, yes, but within me I was content, because I could see that the Lord was given a little respite. Afterwards, those enemies disappeared, and I remained alone with my Jesus. I tried to compassionate him, but I did not dare to say anything. And he, breaking the silence, said to me, all that you have seen is nothing compared to the offenses that they give me continuously. Their blindness, their flooding themselves with the things of the earth is such that they reach the point of becoming not only my cruel enemies, but also enemies of themselves, and since their eyes are fixed on mud, they reach the point of despising the eternal. Who will put an end to so much ingratitude? Who will have compassion for so many people, who cost me blood, and who live almost buried in the stench of earthly things? Oh please, come with me, and pray and cry together with me for so many blind who are all eyes for all that gives of earth, and then despise and trample my graces under their filthy feet, as if they were mud. Oh please, lift yourself above all that is earth, abhor and despise all that does not belong to me.